Myra was only 10 years old but already known by everyone in the city. She was the only child of Mr. Devansh, the richest man in town. People called her the Heiress because one day, she would own all of her father's businesses, hotels, factories, and even the Rosehill Hospital, where she now stayed day and night. Myra had been sick for months. At first, it was only small things. She stopped eating much. She became quiet. Her smile, which once made people stop and look, slowly disappeared. Her teachers noticed first, then her nannies, and finally the family doctor. Soon, she was brought to the hospital. Room A was on the top floor, far from the noise. The walls were painted white. The bed was big and soft. Expensive flowers stood in glass vases. The curtains were light blue and moved gently when the wind came in through the small open window. Everything in the room was perfect. Everything except Myra. She didn't talk. She didn't laugh. She didn't cry. She just sat or lay on the bed, her dark eyes staring at something no one else could see. She looked lost, like her mind was far away. Doctors came every week. Not one or two but 20 different ones over the past few months. Some wore glasses and spoke in long words. Others carried big machines and looked at screens. They checked her heart, her brain, her stomach. They gave her tests, injections, pills. Every time, her father sent more money. He even called doctors from other countries. But nothing helped. Some doctors said it was a very rare illness. Others said her body was fine but her mind was tired. One even said she was pretending. But no one could give a clear answer. Myra's condition stayed the same or got worse. Her weight dropped. Her hands became thin. Her eyes stayed sad. Mr. Devansh was too busy to stay. He called the head nurse every day, sent expensive gifts, and told her to do whatever was needed. But money could not fix what no one understood. Her nannies came and went. Her teachers left messages. But Myra didn't respond to anyone. And so, each evening, when the day staff left and the halls grew quiet, a man named Tom began his shift. Tom was the janitor at Rosehill Hospital. He had worked there for 5 years. Most people did not notice him. He wore a gray uniform, pushed a cleaning cart, and moved from floor to floor with a mop in hand. He was not rich. He lived in a small rented house with his daughter, Mira, who was the same age as Myra. Tom had kind eyes and a calm voice. He spoke little and listened more. While he cleaned the floors, he watched people. He noticed who was happy, who was tired, and who needed help. He didn't have a doctor's degree, but he had something rare: he paid attention. One night, as Tom walked past room A, he slowed down. He had seen Myra many times through the glass door, always sitting still, her hands on her lap. But something felt different that night. The room was quiet as usual. The nurse was not there. The lights were soft. Myra was looking outside the window. Her lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. Then she turned her head slowly, just for a second, and looked straight at Tom. It was the first time. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. But her eyes met his, and something in that look made Tom stop. It wasn't fear. It wasn't sadness. It was something else. Something small but important. Tom felt it. A tiny clue. Like a light at the end of a long tunnel. He didn't say anything. He didn't want to scare her. He just nodded gently and moved on. But inside, he knew. he had seen something no doctor had seen. And from that night, he decided to watch more closely. Because sometimes, answers don't come from machines or medicine. Sometimes, they come from the quiet things no one else notices. And Tom had just noticed the first one. The next night, Tom came early to his shift. He cleaned the floors of the main lobby quickly, then made his way to the upper floor where Myra's room was. He pushed his cart slowly past room A and stopped for a moment like he always did. Myra was sitting up in bed. Her back was straight and her eyes were open wide. She was not looking at the window this time. She was staring at the food tray in front of her. A small bowl of soup sat untouched. A piece of bread was lying on the side, but what caught Tom's eye was the paper napkin beside the spoon. There was something drawn on it. Tom bent down and acted like he was picking something from the floor, but he was really trying to get a better look at the napkin. It was a flower, not a full one, just the petals, a half-open flower with a few broken lines around it as if someone had drawn it with shaky hands. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Tom stood up again quietly and continued pushing his cart, but his mind was racing. A child who had not spoken in months, a girl who barely moved, had suddenly drawn something that meant something was changing. The next night he came again. This time he brought something with him, a small paper notepad and a pencil. He cleaned near Myra's room and waited. He saw her again sitting the same way. This time she was looking at the corner of the room. Her fingers tapped lightly on the bed sheet. When the nurse left for a moment, Tom took a chance. He knocked lightly on the glass door. Myra turned her head slowly. Her eyes met his again. Tom held up the notepad and showed her the pencil. He didn't speak, he just gave a small smile. Then he tore off one blank page and gently slipped it under the door. For a few seconds nothing happened. Myra looked down at the page, then back at Tom. Then something surprising happened. She picked up the page. Tom watched as she held the pencil in her tiny fingers. Her hands moved slowly. She didn't write anything but made a small shape on the paper again. It was a flower, this time with a tiny sun above it. Tom nodded and smiled again. He didn't need words. That night when he went home, he sat down with his daughter Mira at dinner. She looked tired from school but happy. "How was your day?" he asked as he placed food on her plate. "It was okay," Mira replied. "We drew flowers in art class. Miss told us each flower has a meaning." Tom looked up. "Meaning?" "Yes," Mira said. "Like roses mean love, sunflowers mean hope, lilies mean peace." Tom froze for a second, then slowly smiled. "What does a broken flower mean?" Mira thought for a moment. "Maybe sadness, maybe something lost." Tom nodded again, deep in thought. He didn't tell Mira about Myra, not yet, but in his heart he felt he had just learned something important. The next few nights the same thing happened. Myra would draw one small picture every night. Sometimes it was a flower, sometimes a tree, sometimes a bird with one wing. Each one spoke louder than words. Tom began to keep those drawings. He folded them carefully and placed them in an old envelope. He showed them to no one, not yet. One evening when Tom was cleaning near the nurses' station, he heard two nurses talking. "Dr. Samir is coming tomorrow. He's the 21st one. They say he's the best child specialist in the country." Tom kept cleaning quietly, but inside he felt something strange. 20 doctors had already failed. They looked at Myra like a puzzle to be solved. But what if she wasn't a puzzle? What if she was telling her story in the only way she could? And what if no one had truly listened except him? Tom looked at the glass door again. Myra was now lying down, her eyes closed, the last drawing still in her hand, a single bird flying above a tree. Tom whispered to himself, "She's not silent, she's speaking. We just need to understand her language." The next morning, the hospital was busier than usual. Nurses moved quickly. The head nurse checked the files again and again. The windows were cleaned twice. The floor was shining more than ever. Dr. Samir was coming. He was not just any doctor. People said he was a genius. He had written books and worked in many big hospitals. Parents waited for months to get one appointment with him. He was known for solving cases that no one else could. At 10 o'clock sharp he arrived, tall, smart and confident. He wore a white coat and shiny shoes. He greeted the hospital staff with a soft smile but serious eyes. "Where is the patient?" he asked. The head nurse led him to room A. He looked through the glass window and saw Myra sitting as usual, her face calm, her hands still. She hasn't spoken in months, the nurse said. She eats very little, she sometimes draws on paper but nothing more. Dr. Samir entered the room. Myra looked at him once, then looked away. He sat beside her, spoke gently, asked a few questions, showed her a picture book. Myra didn't react. After 20 minutes he came out and shook his head. She is under deep emotional stress, he said. There is no medical issue, she needs long-term therapy and a calm space. The staff nodded respectfully and wrote down his advice. Tom was mopping the floor nearby. He had heard everything that night. Tom stood outside room A again. He held the small envelope with all Myra's drawings inside, her messages, her voice without sound. He wanted to say something, but he was just a janitor. No one asked for his opinion. No one looked at him as someone who could help. Still he waited for the nurse to leave for a short break. Then he gently knocked on the door. Again Myra looked up, this time faster than before. Tom showed her a new blank page and slipped it under the door. Myra picked up her pencil slowly and began to draw. Tonight she drew two people, one small, one tall, holding hands. One of them had a small heart drawn near the chest, the other had a tear on the face. Tom understood it was her and someone else. He took out the older drawings and looked at them again. The half flower, the bird with one wing, the tree with no leaves, each one was full of quiet pain. He could no longer keep silent. The next morning Tom waited near the head nurse's desk. He held the envelope in his hand. "Excuse me," he said quietly, "I would like to show you something about the girl in room A." The nurse looked surprised. "You are the janitor, right?" "Yes," Tom said, "but I think I've noticed something others haven't." She hesitated, then nodded. "All right, show me." Tom opened the envelope and placed the drawings on the table. The nurse looked at each one. Her face slowly changed from confusion to deep thought. "She's been speaking through these," Tom said. "Every picture means something. She's not just sick, she's trying to tell us a story of someone missing or someone she lost." The nurse picked up the drawing with the two people and the tear. "This could be her mother," she whispered. "Myra's mother passed away last year. It was sudden. No one explained it to her properly. She was just taken to boarding school after the funeral and then brought back when she got sick." Tom nodded slowly. "Maybe she never got the chance to grieve. Maybe she never understood what happened. She was just expected to be okay." The nurse looked at Tom with respect. "You may be right, and you may be the only one who truly saw her that night." For the first time the nurse brought in a therapist who didn't ask questions. She sat with Myra and just showed her drawings of families and memories. Myra didn't speak, but her eyes filled with tears. Tom stood outside quietly. He didn't go inside. He didn't need to. Myra was finally being heard. Days passed, and Myra's condition slowly changed. It was small things at first, a blink here, a small movement there. She didn't speak yet, but the drawings continued. Each night, Tom collected them carefully, keeping them safe in his worn envelope. One afternoon, Tom was taking a short break outside the hospital. He liked to sit near the small garden behind the building. It was a quiet place with green grass, colorful flowers, and a few wooden benches. The garden was empty today, except for Myra's nurse, Sarah, who was watering the plants. Tom greeted her softly. "Beautiful flowers," he said. Sarah smiled. "Yes. The garden helps many patients feel calm." Tom nodded and looked around. Then, almost without thinking, he said, "Maybe Myra should see the garden." Sarah looked surprised. "You mean take her outside?" "Yes," Tom said. "Sometimes fresh air and sunlight help more than medicine." Sarah thought for a moment and then nodded. "I will ask the doctor." That evening, the nurse pushed Myra's bed into the garden. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted with soft pink and orange. Myra's eyes opened wider than usual. She looked around slowly, taking in the colors, the smells, and the sounds of birds singing nearby. Tom was there too, quietly sitting on a bench with his cleaning tools forgotten beside him. He watched Myra's face change. It was as if the garden was speaking to her, telling her stories without words. Myra reached out her hand. A butterfly landed gently on her finger. She smiled, a small, shy smile that made Tom's heart warm. The next few days, Myra's visits to the garden became a routine. Nurses helped her out of the room and pushed her bed to the grass. Sometimes she closed her eyes and breathed deeply. Sometimes she traced the petals of the flowers with her fingers. One day, while Myra was resting, Tom sat near her and opened the envelope of drawings. He showed one to Sarah, a drawing of a tree with strong roots and wide branches. "Look at this," Tom said. "It's like she wants to grow again." Sarah nodded slowly. "She's trying to tell us she wants to live. She wants to be strong." Tom smiled. "I think she needs to feel love and hope. Not just medicine." Sarah looked at him kindly. "You have a special way of seeing things, Tom. Maybe you are the key to helping Myra." Tom laughed softly. "I'm just a janitor. But I love my daughter. Maybe that's why I understand." That night, Myra drew a new picture, a small house with two figures holding hands. Tom saw it clearly. It was a family. A happy one. He showed the drawing to Sarah the next day. "She wants to be with someone," he said. "Maybe she misses her father. Or maybe she misses her mother." Sarah thought about it. Her father is always busy. Maybe Myra feels alone. Tom nodded. "I want to help. Not just with cleaning floors. I want to help her speak." Slowly, Tom and Sarah worked together. They made sure Myra spent time in the garden every day. They talked softly to her, played gentle music, and showed her pictures of happy families. One afternoon, when Tom was changing a light bulb in the hallway, Myra's nurse called him softly. "Come here, Tom." He followed her to room A. Myra was awake and sitting up. She held a new drawing. It was a bright sun shining over a house. Tom smiled and sat beside her. Myra looked at him and then did something unexpected. She touched his hand gently. Tom's eyes filled with tears. It was the first time she had made contact. "She is ready to start talking," Sarah whispered. Tom felt hope for the first time in many months. He looked at Myra's small hand in his and promised himself to be there for her, no matter what. The garden had given her a new chance. And Tom was ready to help her take it. Myra's small hand rested gently in Tom's. It was a quiet moment but full of meaning. Tom felt a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. For months, Myra had been silent, locked inside her own world. Now, it seemed she was slowly coming back. The next morning, the hospital felt different. The nurses moved with hope. The doctors who had once been puzzled looked more hopeful too. Word had spread that something was changing. Tom came to work with a smile. He pushed his cart carefully toward room A. Myra was sitting by the window, looking outside at the blue sky and green trees. Her eyes seemed brighter than before. Sarah was there, smiling softly. "Good morning, Tom," she said. "Myra wants to try something today." Tom's heart beat faster. "Try what?" "Speak," Sarah said gently. "She has not said a word in months. But today, we will try to hear her." Tom nodded. He moved closer to Myra's bed. Myra looked at him and gave a small smile. It was shy but real. Tom took a deep breath and said, "Hello, Myra." She looked down for a moment, then looked up again. Her lips moved slowly. The sound was soft, almost like a whisper. "Duh, duh," Tom's eyes widened. Was that her first word? "Duh, duh," Sarah smiled too. "That's a start," she said. Tom nodded, feeling tears rise in his eyes. He looked at Myra and said gently, "Do you want to say more?" Myra's eyes filled with tears. She took a small breath and tried again. Dad, the room was quiet except for Myra's soft voice. It was not clear, but it was a word. Tom squeezed her hand gently. Yes, Myra. Daddy. The nurse called the doctor, who came quickly to see Myra. He watched her carefully, smiling quietly. This is very good progress, he said. 4 weeks after that, Myra tried to say more words. They were slow and difficult, but each one was like a small victory. Tom helped her by showing pictures, drawing simple shapes, and always speaking softly. At home, Tom told his daughter Mira about Myra's first word. Mira was excited and wanted to help too. I can teach her words, Mira said. I will bring my books and read to her. Tom smiled. That's a great idea. The next day, Mira came to the hospital with her favorite books. She sat by Myra's bed and showed her pictures of animals, colors, and family. Myra watched closely and tried to repeat the sounds. One afternoon, Myra looked at Mira and said clearly, Mira. Mira's eyes shone. You said my name, she said happily. Myra smiled, a bright smile that reached her eyes. It was the first time she smiled like that in months. Tom felt proud. He knew Myra was healing not just in her body but in her heart. But not everyone was happy. One evening, as Tom was cleaning near the hospital office, he overheard 2 men talking in low voices. They were talking about Mr. Devansh, Myra's father. They say he wants to move Myra to another hospital, one man said. He doesn't believe the doctors here can fix her. The other man nodded. He is losing patience. He wants quick results and will not wait. Tom's heart sank. He knew that moving Myra now could undo all the progress she had made. She needed time, love, and patience, not rush and pressure. The next morning, Tom went to see the head nurse. Is it true? He asked quietly. Is Myra going to be moved? The nurse sighed. Her father is very worried. He wants the best for her. But I am afraid he does not understand what she needs. Tom thought hard. He knew he had to do something. He had to help Myra's father see the truth. That afternoon, when the hospital was quiet, Tom asked the nurse if he could speak with Mr. Devansh. To his surprise, she agreed. Tom waited nervously in the hospital lobby. When Mr. Devansh arrived, looking tired and serious, Tom stood up and introduced himself. I am Tom, he said politely. I work here as a janitor. But I have spent a lot of time with Myra. Mr. Devansh looked at him carefully. Tom took a deep breath. She is not just sick. She is trying to heal. She is speaking in her own way. Please give her time. Mr. Devansh was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I just want my daughter to be well. So do we all, Tom said gently. But healing takes time. She needs love and patience. She needs people who listen. Mr. Devansh looked at the drawings Tom showed him. He saw the small flowers, the birds, the trees. Slowly, a change came to his face. Maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand. Mr. Devansh sat quietly in the hospital waiting room. The envelope of drawings lay on his lap. Tom's words echoed in his mind. For so long, he had only thought about doctors, medicine, and fast cures. But this was different. The drawings were simple. A broken flower, a bird with one wing, a tree with no leaves. At first, they seemed like just childish pictures. But now, Mr. Devansh saw the story they told. A story of pain, loneliness, and hope. His thoughts turned to Myra. His little girl, who once ran happily through their big house. Who laughed with her mother and played with friends. But now, she was quiet and still, lost in her own world. Mr. Devansh felt a tightness in his chest. He had been so busy with work that he forgot to be a father. He remembered the day Myra's mother died. He remembered how he rushed to meetings and left Myra alone with nurses. He had thought money could fix everything. Now he knew it was not enough. When Tom came to speak with him, something inside him softened. He saw a man who cared deeply not just for Myra but for his own daughter, Mira. He saw hope where he had only seen failure. That evening, Mr. Devansh asked to visit Myra's room. He wanted to see her again, not as a patient but as his daughter. When he entered room A, Myra looked up. Her eyes were wide, and for a moment, he thought she recognized him. She tried to smile but it was small and shy. He sat beside her and took her hand gently. "Myra," he said softly. "I am here." She looked at him and whispered, Daddy," he said with tears in his eyes. "I am here. I will stay with you." From that day on, Mr. Devansh began to change. He stopped rushing to meetings and started spending time with Myra. He asked the nurses and therapists how he could help. He listened more than he spoke. Tom watched this change with hope. The man who had once been distant was now becoming part of Myra's healing. One afternoon, Mr. Devansh came to the garden where Myra sat. The sun was warm, and birds sang softly. He sat beside her and said, "I want to learn about the drawings you make." Myra looked at him and slowly took a pencil. She drew a small sun shining over a house. "That's our home," Mr. Devansh said quietly. "We will be okay." Slowly, Myra began to speak more words. With patience and love, her father learned to understand her language. He saw that healing was not just about doctors and medicine. It was about family and hope. Meanwhile, Tom continued to watch over Myra like a guardian. He cleaned the hospital floors, but his heart was always with the little girl who had shown him the meaning of hope. One day, Mira visited Myra again. The two girls sat together, drawing flowers and trees. They laughed softly. For the first time, Myra felt safe to be a child again. The hospital staff noticed the change too. The doctors began to smile when they saw Myra's progress. The nurses spoke softly to her, and the therapists celebrated small victories. Mr. Devansh thanked Tom one evening. "You saved my daughter," he said sincerely. Tom smiled humbly. "I only saw what she was trying to say." Myra's journey was still not over, but she was no longer lost. She was found in the love of her father, the kindness of a janitor, and the hope in her own heart. Months passed, and Myra's world slowly grew brighter. The once quiet and still girl was now drawing more, speaking more, and even smiling more. The small steps she took every day were like new flowers blooming after a long winter. Tom watched her with pride. The drawings he kept in his old envelope had become a symbol of hope. They told a story of pain, healing, and love. He often thought about how one tiny clue, a simple drawing on a napkin, had started it all. Myra's father, Mr. Devansh, was now fully involved in her care. He had changed from a busy, distant man to a loving, patient father. He spent hours with Myra in the garden, reading books with Mira, and talking softly to her. He had learned to listen, not just with his ears but with his heart. One sunny afternoon, Myra surprised everyone. She spoke her first full sentence. Sitting in the garden, she looked up at her father and said clearly, "I love you, Dad." Mr. Devonsh's eyes filled with tears. He gently held her hand and said, "I love you too, Myra. Always." The hospital staff cheered quietly from the doorway. It was a moment of joy for everyone who had cared for Myra. Tom felt a quiet happiness inside. He had never imagined that his small acts of kindness would make such a difference. He knew that sometimes the most important things were not the big medicine or fancy machines but the simple human touch. One evening, Tom sat with his daughter Mira at home. He told her about Myra's progress. Mira listened with wide eyes and smiled. "You helped her, Papa," Mira said. "You didn't give up." Tom smiled back. Sometimes, seeing is the first step to helping. Weeks later, the doctors announced that Myra was ready to leave the hospital. She still had a long way to go, but her health was strong enough to continue therapy at home. Her family and friends would be there to support her. On her last day, the whole hospital gathered to say goodbye. Nurses hugged her, doctors smiled, and Tom stood quietly with the envelope of drawings. He handed it to Mr. Devonsh. "These are Myra's words," Tom said softly. "Her story. Keep them safe." Mr. Devonsh took the envelope with a grateful nod. "I will. Thank you, Tom, for never giving up on her." Myra waved goodbye as she was carried out in her wheelchair. Her eyes shone with hope. She was no longer just the silent girl in room A. She was a girl full of life, ready for a new beginning. After the hospital quieted down, Tom returned to his duties. But his heart was light. He had learned that kindness and patience could change lives. He believed that everyone had a story to tell, sometimes in ways we might not expect. From that day on, Tom looked at the world differently. He noticed the little signs others missed. A smile hidden behind a frown. A quiet voice waiting to be heard. And somewhere, in a new home filled with love, Myra began to build her future, one word, one drawing, and one hope at a time.